Kyle Harrison stood in the center of the massive chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. The room was enormous, big enough to hold thousands of beings. Above him, 47 different alien species sat in their designated seats, looking down at the human delegation. The air felt heavy, thick with tension and unspoken words. He had known this day was coming. The whispers had started months ago, spreading through the galactic network like a disease. Humanity was too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to live among the civilized races. Kyle had hoped it was just talk, just fear speaking. He had been wrong. High Arbiter Velnash rose from his seat. His body was made of some kind of crystal that caught the light and threw it in sharp angles across the room. When he spoke, his voice echoed from every wall. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision," Velnash announced. "Humanity will have one standard cycle to leave all territories beyond your home system. You must abandon all colonies, all outposts, all claims to any world except Earth, Luna, and Mars." Kyle felt his jaw tighten. Behind him, he heard Lisa Bennett draw in a sharp breath. Greg Murphy shifted in his seat. Patricia Moore remained perfectly still, but Kyle knew she was furious. They all were. "We have broken no laws," Kyle said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. "Every world we settled was empty. No one lived there. No one claimed them. We followed every rule. We signed every treaty and kept our word." "You misunderstand the situation," Velnash replied. His crystalline face showed no emotion. "This is not about laws. This is not punishment for crimes. This is prevention. Your species makes others uncomfortable. Your history of wars, your weapons, your ability to endure pain and suffering that would destroy any civilized race. The Council has decided. You have one cycle to leave." "And if we refuse?" Greg asked from his seat. The chamber went silent. Every alien representative turned to look at the human engineer. Some looked afraid. Others looked angry. A few looked almost hopeful, as if they wanted humanity to fight back, to prove they were right to fear them. "Then the 47 civilized species of this galaxy will enforce the decision," Velnash said simply. "Do not make us do this the hard way. Accept exile peacefully. Go home to your system. Stay there. It is better for everyone." The meeting ended quickly after that. No one wanted to talk to the humans. The alien representatives filed out of the chamber, avoiding eye contact, hurrying to their ships. Within an hour, the building was empty except for the 4 humans. Lisa walked over to where Kyle stood, still staring up at the empty seats. "What do we do?" she asked. Kyle was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We go home." "Just like that?" Greg's voice was bitter. "We just accept this?" "What choice do we have?" Patricia asked. She sounded tired. "We have 300 colonies spread across this arm of the galaxy. Billions of people. If we fight, they'll crush us. 47 species against 1. We can't win that war." "So we run away," Greg said. "No," Kyle said quietly. "We retreat. There's a difference. We go back to Sol system. We gather our strength. We remember this day. And we make sure it never happens again." The message went out within days. Every human colony, every outpost, every research station received the same order. Come home. Pack everything you can carry. Leave nothing important behind. The exodus begins now. Captain Alex Wright watched from his monitoring station as the human ships began to move. He was not human. He belonged to a species called the Helion Reach, a peaceful race that had always been neutral toward humanity. His job was to watch the border between human space and council space, to make sure no one crossed without permission. Now he watched as humanity crossed that border in reverse. Thousands of ships, all heading back toward Earth. Big colony ships carrying entire populations. Small personal vessels with families aboard. Cargo haulers loaded with equipment and supplies. They came from every direction, converging on Sol system like rivers flowing to the sea. "Are they really leaving?" his second officer asked. Kira Hollings. was from the Turvan species, tall and thin with large eyes that saw in spectrums humans could not. It appears so, Alex said. No fight? No resistance? I thought humans were supposed to be violent. Maybe that's why they're not fighting, Alex said thoughtfully. Maybe they know what would happen if they did. The evacuation took 6 months. 6 long months of watching human ships stream past his station. Alex filed reports every week. No incidents, no violations, no aggression. The humans were leaving quietly, peacefully, exactly as ordered. But something bothered him. He could not quite identify what it was at first. Then one day he realized the ships were organized. Too organized. This was not a panicked retreat. This was a planned withdrawal. Every ship knew exactly where to go, exactly what to do. The humans were not running in fear. They were executing a strategy. On Earth, Kyle Harrison stood in the command center and watched the reports come in. New Portland Colony evacuated. Genesis Station, abandoned. Hope's Landing, empty. One by one, the human settlements went dark. Everything humanity had built over 2 centuries, given up in half a year. The last transport just left Horizon Colony, Lisa reported. That's it. Everyone's home. Kyle nodded. Around him, the command center was filled with people working at terminals, coordinating the massive influx of refugees. Earth's population had doubled. Mars was overcrowded. Luna's habitats were stretched to capacity. It would take years to sort everything out, to find homes for everyone, to rebuild lives. What now? Greg asked. Kyle turned to look at him. Now we build. We take everything we have and we make it better. Every weapon, every ship, every piece of technology. We improve it, we train, we prepare, we make sure that if this ever happens again, we're ready. Ready for what? Patricia asked. For whatever comes next, Kyle said. The Galactic Council breathed easier once humanity was safely back in Sol System. The dangerous species was contained. The threat was neutralized. They could return to their peaceful existence, trading and talking and avoiding conflict. High Arbiter Vel Nash filed his final report on the matter. The human problem had been solved without violence. It was a victory for civilization, for diplomacy, for the rule of law. He congratulated himself on handling the situation so well. He did not know that in Sol System, humanity was already at work. Shipyards were being built in orbit around every planet and moon. Factories were being established on asteroids. Research facilities were being constructed in the cold dark between worlds. Every human who could work was working. Every mind that could think was thinking. The galaxy had given humanity a gift, though they did not realize it. They had given them time. Time to focus. Time to prepare. Time to become something new. Kyle Harrison stood at the window of the orbital station, looking out at the work. Ships were being built. Weapons were being tested. Soldiers were training in the harsh environments of airless moons and radiation-soaked asteroids. Humanity was transforming itself into something the galaxy had never seen before. They're going to regret this, Lisa said, standing beside him. Maybe, Kyle said. Or maybe they'll thank us one day, when they need us, when they remember why evolution made us the way we are. You think they'll need us? I know they will, Kyle said. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and they just sent away the only species that knows how to survive in it. Outside the window, another warship took shape, its hull gleaming in the distant sunlight. Humanity was going home, but they would not stay there forever. One day the galaxy would call them back, and when that day came, humanity would be ready. The Council ship approached Sol System slowly, cautiously, broadcasting on every frequency. Ambassador Trelvik stood on the bridge watching the view screen with growing unease. He had volunteered for this mission, though now he questioned that decision. Still no response, the communications officer reported. She was Turvan, young and clearly nervous. We've been broadcasting for 3 hours. Keep trying, Trelvik said. Beside him stood General Nix Harper of the Erythian Defense Corps, a tall being with forearms and scales that shifted color with his emotions. Right now, those scales were showing deep purple, the color of fear. Captain Denise Grant was there too, still recovering from her injuries at Keltar. And Dr. Helen Brooks, the only one who seemed calm. What if they don't answer? Nix asked. What if they refuse to even talk to us? Then we go home and die, Helen said simply. The Vrexen will consume world after world until there's nothing left. We have maybe 6 months before they reach the core systems. Without help, we're finished. Maybe they're not here, Denise suggested. Maybe they went somewhere else. Left the galaxy entirely. Then the communications console beeped. A message, short and direct in perfect galactic standard. Permission granted. Proceed to Mars Orbital Station. Come alone and unarmed. The pilot changed course. As they drew closer to Mars, the delegation saw something that made their blood run cold. A station hung in orbit, massive beyond anything they had expected. It was easily 10 times the size of the largest council station, bristling with weapons. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. Gun ports covered every surface. Missile tubes. Energy projectors. Designs they did not recognize. Look at the power readings, the sensor officer whispered. That station could destroy a fleet. That station could destroy a planet, Nix corrected, his scales now pale with shock. They docked carefully. The airlock opened to reveal a long corridor, clean and stark. 3 humans waited for them at the end. The first was an old man in a wheelchair, his hair white, his face lined with age but his eyes sharp and alert. The second was a military officer, gray-haired and stern, his uniform decorated with medals. The third was a woman younger, wearing an admiral's insignia, her expression cold and calculating. Ambassador Trelvik, the old man said. It was not a question. I'm Kyle Harrison. We met once 50 years ago. I doubt you remember. I remember, Trelvik said quietly. You spoke against our decision to exile your people. I did. And here we are. Kyle gestured to his companions. General Paul Jenkins. Admiral Claire Stevens, you said you needed to speak with us. So speak. There was no warmth in his voice. No welcome. Just cold efficiency. Trelvik had prepared a speech, diplomatic words carefully chosen to soften the request. But standing there facing the 3 humans, all those words seemed hollow. So he told the truth. The Vrexen are killing us. They're consuming everything. We tried to fight them. 5,000 ships, the best we had. We lost 4,000 in 6 minutes. Nothing works against them. They adapt to everything. We're dying and we don't know how to stop them. And you want us to stop them for you, Kyle said. Yes, Trelvik admitted. We were wrong to exile you. We see that now. We were afraid of your violence, your weapons, your nature. But now we need exactly those things. We're begging you. Please help us. Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Paul, who nodded slightly. Claire's expression did not change. Come with me, Kyle said. He led them through the station to an observation deck. The wall was entirely transparent, offering a view of space beyond. And there, spreading out in every direction, was the human fleet, ships, thousands of them. Small fighters and massive dreadnoughts, carriers and destroyers, cruisers and frigates. They hung in perfect formation row after row, stretching to the horizon. And beyond Mars they could see more, shipyards spanning moons, construction facilities built into asteroids, factories floating in the void. We've been busy, Kyle said softly. For 50 years, every resource, every person, every waking moment has gone toward one goal. Making sure we would never be helpless again. Making sure that if the galaxy ever came calling, we would be ready. How many ships? Nix asked, his voice barely a whisper. 8,000 combat vessels, Claire answered. Plus support craft, transport ships, supply vessels. We can field 5 million soldiers, trained in every environment, every type of combat. We have weapons you've never seen, tactics you've never imagined. We've spent half a century preparing for war. Against who? Helen asked. Against us? Against anyone, Paul said. Against everyone. Against threats we could imagine and threats we couldn't. We didn't know what would come next. So we prepared for everything. Kyle turned his wheelchair to face them. 50 years ago you told us we were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. You sent us away like criminals, like monsters. Do you know what that did to us? Trelvik shook his head. It focused us, Kyle said. Every human, every colony, every person knew that we were alone, that we could only count on ourselves. So we became what you feared. We embraced it. We built weapons that would horrify you, We developed tactics that break every civilized rule of warfare. We trained our people to endure things that would kill most species. Because that's what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted us to be monsters. So we became monsters. And now you need those monsters to save you. The silence stretched painfully. Finally, Trelvik found his voice. If we could change the past, we would. If we could take back that decision, we would do it in a heartbeat. But we can't. All we can do is ask, "Will you help us?" Kyle looked at his companions. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Then he turned back to the delegation. "We'll help you, on one condition." "Anything," Trelvik said quickly. "Name it." "When this is over, humanity gets a full seat on the Galactic Council. Full voting rights. Full territorial rights. No restrictions. No probation. No second-class citizenship. We come back as equals or we don't come back at all." Trelvik did not hesitate. "Done. I'll sign the agreement myself. I'll take it before the council today. You have my word." "Words are cheap," Claire said coldly. "We want it in writing. A treaty ratified by the full council. Legal and binding." "You'll have it," Trelvik promised. Kyle smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Then let's go save your galaxy." The next hours were a blur. The delegation was given quarters on the station while the humans made preparations. Trelvik watched through the windows as the fleet began to move. Ships that had been still for decades suddenly came to life. Engines flared. Formation patterns shifted. The massive war machine humanity had built was waking up. Helen found him standing there late in the night cycle. "They're incredible," she said. "Terrifying, but incredible. Look at the precision. Every ship knows exactly what to do. This isn't a fleet. It's a weapon." "We created this," Trelvik said quietly. "If we had treated them as equals, if we had welcomed them, trusted them, maybe they would have been different. Maybe they would have become peaceful. Instead, we made them into this." "Maybe," Helen said. "Or maybe this is who they always were. Maybe this is what it takes to survive in a hostile universe. We evolved in safety and comfort. They evolved in constant danger. Every generation of humans faced death. It made them hard, but it also made them survivors. Do you think they'll really help us, or will they watch us die?" Helen shook her head. "They'll help. Because despite everything, despite the exile and the fear and the hatred, they're still human, and humans protect things. It's in their nature. They protect their families, their friends, their territory, and I think maybe they still see us as part of their territory, even if we don't deserve it." Kyle Harrison sat in his quarters looking at old photographs. His wife dead 20 years now. His children grown and serving in the fleet. His grandchildren training to be soldiers. 3 generations had grown up in exile, knowing only preparation for war. Paul entered without knocking. "The fleet is ready. We can launch in 6 hours. How are the crews?" "Eager, angry, ready to prove themselves. They've trained their whole lives for this. Now they finally get to show the galaxy what humanity can do." "Make sure they understand the rules," Kyle said. "We're not doing this for revenge. We're not punishing the council species. We're saving them. Every civilian life matters. Every world we can protect matters. This is not about hate. This is about showing them we're better than they thought." "Some of the younger officers won't like that," Paul said. "They don't have to like it. They just have to obey." Kyle turned his wheelchair to face his old friend. "We're getting one chance at this, Paul. One chance to show the galaxy who we really are. If we act like the monsters they feared, we prove them right. If we act like heroes, we prove them wrong. Which do you want?" Paul smiled. "Heroes it is. I'll spread the word." Alone again, Kyle looked out at the fleet. 8,000 ships, 5 million soldiers, 50 years of preparation. It had all been building to this moment. The galaxy had cast them out, called them dangerous, feared their nature. And now that same galaxy was begging for help. The irony was not lost on him. But Kyle had meant what he said. This was not about revenge. This was about proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars. Not as second-class citizens, not as tolerated guests, but as equals. The Vrexen were coming. The galaxy was dying. And humanity? The human fleet emerged from jump space like an iron storm. 8,000 ships moving in perfect formation, engines burning bright against the darkness. At the center flew the Defiant, Admiral Claire Stevens commanding from the bridge. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was young but capable, having trained his entire life for this moment. "Status of Council forces?" Claire asked. scattered formations across 3 sectors. They're trying to regroup after the losses at Keltar. Morale is low. Many ships are damaged, and he paused. Admiral, they're broadcasting thanks. Some of them are crying. Claire's expression did not change. Acknowledge their messages. Tell them to fall in behind us. We'll take point. The Council ships did as ordered, forming up behind the human fleet. It was a strange sight. Vessels from 47 different species, each with unique designs and capabilities, following behind the uniform ranks of human warships. On the bridge of the Council flagship, Ambassador Trelvik watched the display with something close to awe. They move like one organism. How is that possible? Discipline, General Nick said from beside him. And practice. Look at the spacing. Perfect. The formation density. Optimal. They've run these maneuvers thousands of times. Where did they learn to fight like this? Captain Denise asked. They've had no wars. No conflicts. Who taught them? They taught themselves, Dr. Helen said softly. Simulations. War games. Constant training against imagined enemies. For 50 years they've been fighting ghosts. Now they get to fight something real. The combined fleet moved toward the Delvar system where the Vrexen had been detected. It took 3 days of travel. 3 days of watching the humans work, of seeing how they operated. Every watch change was precise. Every duty rotation was smooth. The ships maintained perfect formation even through difficult navigation. Council crews began to feel something they had not felt since the war started. Hope, Jake Morrison, stood in the fighter bay, checking his equipment. Around him, 200 other pilots did the same. They were the tip of the spear, the first wave that would engage the enemy. Nervous? His wingman, Lieutenant Sarah Cole, asked. Terrified, Jake admitted, but also excited. We've been training for this since we were kids. Now we get to see if it was worth it. It'll be worth it, Sarah said confidently. We're going to show those Council species what humans can do. Remember the briefing, Jake cautioned. We're not showing off. We're saving lives. Every civilian world we protect, every ship we keep alive, that's a victory. I know. Be heroes, not monsters. The Admiral made it very clear. They launched an hour later, 200 fighters screaming away from their carriers. Behind them, the main fleet advanced. Ahead, the sensors detected the Vrexen swarm. Claire stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the tactical display. Red icons appeared on the screen, hundreds of them, each representing a Vrexen vessel. They were organic ships, living things that moved with disturbing grace. They're adapting their formation, Jake reported from his fighter, moving to counter our approach. Expected, Claire said calmly. All ships execute pattern Alpha 7. Rotate weapon types on my mark. The fleet spread out, ships taking positions that seemed random but were carefully calculated. The Vrexen swarm approached, their organic vessels pulsing with alien energy. The battle began. The first human volley was pure kinetic energy. Railguns fired metal slugs at relativistic speeds. The Vrexen ships absorbed some, deflected others. Their hulls began to shift, adapting to the attack. Switch to energy weapons, Claire ordered. Laser batteries fired, particle beams lanced out, plasma cannons discharged. The Vrexen swarm recoiled, surprised by the sudden change. Some ships were destroyed before they could adapt. Others began to modify their defensive fields. Chemical weapons, Claire ordered. Fire. Missiles streaked out, carrying payloads of acids, toxins, and corrosive compounds. The organic Vrexen ships struggled to adapt fast enough. More died, their hulls dissolving. Gravitational distortion. Fire. Space itself bent around the Vrexen ships. Some were crushed. Others were torn apart. The swarm was in chaos now, unable to predict what the humans would do next. Jake led his fighter wing through the confusion, firing missiles and energy weapons in rapid sequence. They can't keep up, he shouted over the comm. Keep changing tactics. Don't let them adapt. On the Council flagship, Trelvik watched in amazement. They're not trying to find the perfect weapon. They're overwhelming the enemy's ability to adapt. Brilliant, Helen breathed. The Vrexen evolved to counter any single threat. But humans are throwing everything at once. The swarm can't adapt fast enough. The battle raged for hours. Human ships rotated through weapon types every 30 seconds. Kinetic, energy, chemical, biological, gravitational, electromagnetic. Some weapons seemed almost primitive. Others were terrifyingly advanced. The constant variation kept the Vrexen off balance. But the swarm was learning. Slowly, painfully, they began to find patterns. Their adaptation rate increased. Human casualties started to mount. "We're losing ships," Jake reported. His voice was strained. "The Vrexen are catching on." Claire's jaw tightened. "All vessels execute Omega Protocol. Authorization Stevens Alpha 9. Admiral," her tactical officer said hesitantly. "Omega Protocol is classified. The Council will see." "Let them see," Claire said coldly. "We promised to save them. Time to keep that promise." Across the fleet, human ships activated weapons systems the Council had never seen. Reality itself seemed to bend around certain vessels. Strange energies poured from others. Some ships simply vanished and reappeared in different locations. These were the weapons humanity had developed in secret, the things they had hoped never to use. The Vrexen swarm began to die in earnest. Their ships tried to adapt but could not. How do you adapt to weapons that break the laws of physics? How do you counter technology built by a species desperate enough to try anything? The battle turned into a rout. The Vrexen swarm broke apart, individual ships fleeing in all directions. Human fighters pursued, showing no mercy. Every Vrexen vessel was hunted down and destroyed. When it was over, the Delvar system was littered with debris. Human ships had taken damage and 300 had been destroyed. But the swarm was gone. Every Vrexen ship was dead. Jake limped his damaged fighter back to the carrier, his hands shaking. He had killed dozens of enemy ships. He had seen friends die. He had pushed his fighter to its limits and beyond. He was exhausted, terrified, and exhilarated all at once. "Good work," Sarah's voice came over the comm. "We won." "First battle," Jake corrected. "There are more swarms out there. This is just the beginning." On the Defiant, Claire received damage reports. 300 ships lost, 2,000 crew dead, 4,700 wounded. The price of victory. "Send the casualty list to command," she ordered, "and prepare the fleet for jump. We need to hit the next swarm before they can regroup." "Admiral," her communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving messages from the Council ships. They want to know what those weapons were. They're demanding access to the technology." Claire smiled without humor. "Tell them those weapons are classified. Humanity's secrets remain humanity's secrets. They wanted us to be dangerous. They don't get to complain when we show them how dangerous we are." Trelvik stood in his quarters trying to process what he had witnessed. The humans had won, yes, but the way they had won terrified him. Those weapons, those tactics, the casual efficiency with which they had destroyed an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. What had the Council created by exiling them? What kind of monster had 50 years of isolation produced? Helen found him later looking pale. "We need to talk," she said, "about the weapons, about everything. Those ships, that technology. Trelvik, humans are at least 50 years ahead of us, maybe 100. In weapons development, in tactical thinking, in their willingness to try things we would never attempt. We exiled them thinking it would make us safer. Instead, we created a power that could destroy us all. They saved us today," Trelvik protested. "Today, yes. But what about tomorrow? What happens when they don't need our approval anymore? What happens when they decide the Council is obsolete? We gave them our word. A seat on the Council. Equal status. And if they decide equal isn't enough?" Helen asked. "We've seen what they can do. We've seen how far ahead they are. What if they want more?" Trelvik had no answer. The human fleet jumped to the next battle, then the next. For 3 weeks they fought the Vrexen across a dozen systems. Every battle was won. Every swarm was destroyed. The humans took casualties, but they never stopped, never slowed, never showed mercy. And the Council species watched, some with gratitude, some with growing fear, because the humans were not just winning, they were dominating. They were proving that in the realm of war, of violence, of brutal efficiency, no species could match them. The galaxy had cast them out for being too dangerous. Now the galaxy was learning just how right they had been, and wondering if saving them had been a terrible mistake. 50 years had passed since humanity retreated to Sol System. For half a century, the galaxy had moved on without them. The empty colonies were filled with new inhabitants. The abandoned stations were reoccupied. The infrastructure humanity had built was put to use by species who marveled at how well it all worked. Ambassador Trelvik stood in what used to be called New Portland, a human colony established on a pleasant world with blue skies and green forests. Now it was called Zentari Outpost 7, home to his people. The Zentari Collective had been one of the voices calling loudest for human exile, and now they lived in the houses humans had built. "Look at this," his aide said, pointing to a building. The supports are 3 times stronger than they need to be. The walls can withstand storms that would flatten our architecture. Why did they build everything so strong? Trelvik walked through the medical center, looking at equipment his people still did not fully understand. Human technology was efficient, practical, built to last, but it was also strange. Everything had backup systems, then backup systems for the backups, as if humans expected everything to fail eventually and planned accordingly. They built like they expected war, Trelvik said quietly. But there was no war here, his aide replied. This was a peaceful colony. They built like they expected war everywhere, Trelvik corrected. He felt a chill run through his body. What kind of species thought that way? Back on the Zentari homeworld, the question was being asked in government chambers. What were the humans doing? For 50 years there had been silence from Sol system. No messages. No requests for trade. No appeals to the council. Nothing at all. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. But they had not vanished. Monitoring stations along the border detected ships occasionally. Human vessels would emerge from Sol system, travel to the edge of their quarantine zone and stop. They would sit there for days, scanning, watching, recording. Then they would turn around and go home. Captain Alex Wright had been promoted twice since the Exodus. He now commanded the largest monitoring station on the border, a massive facility with sensors that could detect a ship from light years away. For 50 years he had watched human space. For 50 years he had filed the same report. No activity, no expansion, no violations, but the reports did not tell the whole story. Another one just appeared, Kira said from her station. She was older now, her movements slower, but her eyes were still sharp. Same pattern as always. Human destroyer holding position at the border. Alex pulled up the data on his screen. The ship was alone, weapons powered down, shields at minimum. It was just sitting there watching them watch it. What are they doing? A young officer asked. He was new to the station, fresh from the academy. Learning, Alex said. Every time they send a ship, they learn a little more about us. Our patrol patterns, our sensor ranges, our response times. Should we report this? I report it every time, Alex said. And every time the council says it's not a violation. They're staying on their side of the border. They're not hurting anyone. But Alex could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The human ship sat at the border for 3 days, then left. A month later, another would come. Then another. For 50 years, this pattern had repeated. The humans were patient, methodical. They were planning something. On Earth, the planning was indeed happening. Kyle Harrison was an old man now, confined to a wheelchair, but his mind was still sharp. He sat in a conference room deep beneath the surface, surrounded by maps and data displays. The Erythian Defense Corps has upgraded their fleet, General Paul Jenkins reported. He was younger than Kyle by 30 years, a career military officer who had spent his entire adult life preparing for a war that might never come. New energy weapons, faster ships, better shields. We can counter all of that, Admiral Claire Stevens added. She was even younger, brilliant and ruthless in equal measure. Our simulations show a 70% success rate against their new configurations. What about the Helion Reach? Kyle asked. Neutral as always, Paul said. They watch us, we watch them. No hostility. But no friendship either. Kyle nodded slowly. The galaxy had divided itself into those who feared humanity and those who pitied them. None saw them as equals. That would change eventually. It had to. How are the shipyards? Kyle asked. Production is ahead of schedule, Claire reported. We now have 6,000 warships of various classes. Another 2,000 in construction. Every vessel is equipped with adaptive weapon systems. We can switch between energy, kinetic, chemical, and exotic weapons in seconds. And the soldiers? 4 million trained and ready, Paul said. Another 1 million in advanced training programs. We've established combat schools on every moon in the system. Every environment. Every possible scenario, Kyle smiled. It was not a happy smile. The council thinks we're hiding in fear. They think we've accepted our place. Let them think that. Let them believe we're harmless. And when they learn the truth? Claire asked. By then, it will be too late, Kyle said. In the Galactic Council chambers, humanity had become a footnote. Meetings were held where they were not mentioned at all. Trade agreements were signed without considering human interests. New exploration zones were designated in areas that used to be human territory. The galaxy had truly moved on. High Arbiter Kolvesh, who had replaced Velnash 10 years earlier, rarely thought about humans at all. They were a solved problem, a historical curiosity. When his advisors suggested sending a diplomatic mission to check on them, he dismissed the idea. Why waste resources? He said. They're contained. They're quiet. Leave them alone. But not everyone had forgotten. Dr. Helen Brooks, a Turvan scientist, had spent years studying human history. Their wars, their conflicts, their endless cycle of violence and recovery. She had written papers about it, given lectures, tried to make people understand what humanity really was. They're not like us, she told her colleagues. Every species in the Council evolved to avoid conflict. We developed diplomacy, trade, cooperation. But humans, they evolved in constant conflict. For millions of years, they fought everything. Their environment, their predators, each other. It made them different. Different how? A colleague asked. Adaptable, creative, resilient, and dangerous. Very, very dangerous. But they left peacefully, the colleague argued. They accepted exile without fighting. That proves they can be civilized. Helen shook her head. Or it proves they're smarter than we thought. They knew they couldn't win a war against 47 species. So they retreated. But that doesn't mean they gave up. Her warnings went unheeded. The Council was comfortable. The galaxy was at peace. There had not been a major war in 3 centuries. Why worry about one small species hiding in their home system? The answer came from beyond the galactic rim. The first reports were confused, contradictory. A mining outpost had gone silent. Then another. Then an entire colony. Ships were sent to investigate. They never returned. Then the long-range sensors picked up something approaching. Something massive. Something alive. The Vrexen had arrived. They came like a plague, a swarm of organic ships that moved with purpose and intelligence. Where they passed, worlds went dark. Not conquered. Not occupied, consumed, every resource stripped away. Every living thing devoured. Nothing left but dead rock floating in space. The first species to encounter them was the Pelian Republic, a peaceful race of traders who had never known war. They sent ambassadors to communicate. The Vrexen consumed the ambassadors and their ship in seconds. The Pelians sent their defense fleet, such as it was. 12 ships lightly armed meant more for show than combat. The Vrexen swarm destroyed them in minutes. The distress call reached the Council within hours. Kolvesh convened an emergency session. Representatives from every species gathered, fear plain on their faces. We need information, Kolvesh said. Send scout ships. Learn what we can about these Vrexen. Find out what they want. They want to eat, Helen said from her seat. She had been invited as an expert on aggressive species. That's all. They're not conquerors. They're not invaders. They're hungry. Then we negotiate, a Zentari representative suggested. Offer them resources. Uninhabited worlds. Surely we can reach an understanding. You can't negotiate with hunger, Helen said. You can only fight it. Or feed it. The Council chose to fight. They assembled a fleet, drawing ships from every species. 5,000 vessels. The largest military force in galactic history. Crews were trained. Weapons were prepared. Strategies were developed by the best military minds the civilized species could produce. They engaged the Vrexen at the Keltar system. The battle was a massacre. The Vrexen adapted to every weapon, learned from every tactic, countered every strategy. Of the 5,000 ships that entered the battle, only 1,000 escaped. The rest were destroyed or consumed, their crews lost, their weapons useless. Captain Denise Grant limped her damaged cruiser back to Council space. Her ship was barely holding together. Life support failing, hull breached in a dozen places. She made her report with hands that would not stop shaking. They can't be stopped, she wrote. Everything we tried, they adapted to. Energy weapons. They absorbed them. Kinetic rounds? They deflected them. We threw everything at them and it wasn't enough. We need help. We need a miracle. The Council met again, but this time there was no debate. 3 months after the first battle, the war was ending. The Vrexen swarm had been pushed back system by system, world by world. Every time they tried to regroup, human forces were there, hitting them with weapons they could not counter, tactics they could not predict. The once terrifying swarm was now fleeing, running back toward the galactic rim. Colonel Linda Hayes stood on the bridge of a transport ship, watching her Marines prepare for what might be the final ground operation. Below them was a world the Vrexen had partially consumed. Millions of Council citizens were still alive, trapped in cities under siege. Her job was to get them out. Drop in 5 minutes, the pilot announced. Linda checked her gear one last time. Around her, 200 Marines did the same. They were young, most of them. Born during the exile, raised with stories of the galaxy that had cast their parents out. Now they were saving that galaxy. Listen up, Linda called out. The Vrexen down there are desperate. That makes them dangerous, but those council citizens are counting on us. Every life we save is a victory. Every person we bring home safely proves we're not the monsters they thought we were. You understand? Yes, Colonel, the Marines shouted in unison. The drop was rough. Their transport took fire from Vrexen ground forces, but the pilot got them down. The Marines deployed quickly, efficiently, forming defensive positions around the landing zone. Then they advanced into the city. The fighting was brutal. Vrexen ground troops were different from their ships, smaller but faster, with razor-sharp appendages and acid spray. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. Everyone had to be killed. Linda's squad cleared building after building, finding survivors huddled in basements and bunkers. Zentari families, Orithian children, Turvan elderly, species that had voted to exile humanity, now being rescued by human soldiers. We've got 50 civilians here, her sergeant reported. They're terrified of us. Show them there's nothing to fear, Linda ordered. Medical attention for anyone who needs it. Food, water, whatever they need. Make them feel safe. It took 6 hours to clear the city. By the end, 400 council civilians had been rescued. 12 Marines had died. Linda stood among the survivors, watching her medics treat wounds, seeing her soldiers share rations, hearing them speak gently to traumatized children. One Zentari woman approached her hesitantly. You saved us, she said in broken galactic standard. We thought you would leave us to die, after what we did to you. Linda removed her helmet. The woman flinched at seeing a human face, then relaxed. We're not here for revenge, Linda said quietly. We're here because it's the right thing to do. That's all. In orbit, Admiral Claire Stevens watched the battle reports come in. The main Vrexen fleet was making one last stand at the Korvax system, the jumping-off point to their territory. Every ship they had left was there. It would be the final battle. The Council is sending their remaining forces, her tactical officer reported. About 2,000 ships. They want to be part of the final victory. Let them come, Claire said. They deserve to see this through. The fleets gathered over 3 days. 8,000 human vessels, battered but unbroken. 2,000 council ships patched together from survivors of earlier battles. It was the largest force ever assembled, pointed at one target. On the council flagship, Trelvik stood with General Nix and Dr. Helen, watching the human fleet maneuver. They had fought beside humans for 3 months now. They had seen things that would give them nightmares for years. But they had also seen courage, sacrifice, and compassion from a species they had thought incapable of it. What happens after this? Nix asked. When the Vrexen are defeated? We keep our word, Trelvik said. Humanity gets its seat on the council. Equal status, full rights. And if they want more? Helen asked quietly. We've all seen their power. Their technology. Trelvik, they could conquer the galaxy if they wanted to. What's to stop them? The same thing that brought them here to help us, Trelvik said. Whatever else they are, humans keep their word. They said they would save us, and they have. We promised them equality, and we'll give it to them. The final battle began at dawn. The Vrexen fleet was massive, 10,000 ships, everyone pulsing with desperate energy. They knew this was their last chance. If they lost here, their species was finished. The human fleet advanced steadily. No fancy maneuvers, no tricks, just overwhelming, relentless pressure. Ship after ship, wave after wave, never stopping, never faltering. The Vrexen tried everything. They adapted. They changed tactics. They fought with the fury of a dying race. It was not enough. Human ships cycled through weapons, rotated battle groups, maintained pressure from every angle. When Council forces joined the attack, the humans coordinated perfectly, giving orders that the other species followed without question. Claire Stevens had become the commander not just of humanity's forces, but of the entire combined fleet. Jake Morrison led his fighter wing through the chaos one last time. His fighter was scarred from 3 months of combat, held together by repairs and determination. He had lost count of how many Vrexen ships he had destroyed. He had stopped thinking about the friends he had lost. There was only the mission. Only the fight, Final push, he ordered his squadron. Let's end this. They dove into the heart of the Vrexen fleet, firing everything they had. Around them, thousands of other human fighters did the same. The Vrexen formation broke. Ships began to flee. The swarm was collapsing. On the Defiant, Claire watched the tactical display as the last Vrexen ships were destroyed. Not captured. Not driven off. Destroyed completely. Humanity had promised to end the threat, and they had done exactly that. It's over, her tactical officer said quietly. All Vrexen vessels destroyed or fleeing. The threat is eliminated. Claire nodded slowly. Send the ceasefire order. Begin rescue operations for any council ships in distress. And inform command. The war is over. We won. The celebration that followed was muted on human ships. They had won, yes. But victory had cost them. 2,000 ships destroyed over 3 months. 15,000 soldiers dead. 30,000 wounded. Every human had lost someone. Friends, family, comrades. But on council ships, the celebration was joyful. They had survived. The Vrexen were defeated. The galaxy was safe. 6 months later, Kyle Harrison attended the signing of the Treaty of Mars. He was still in his wheelchair, even older now, but he had lived to see this day. The Galactic Council, all 47 species assembled in a chamber humanity had built. On Earth in Sol System, the heart of human space. High Arbiter Kolvesh stood to speak. Today we right a wrong committed 50 years ago. Today humanity joins the Galactic Council not as guests, not as probationary members, but as full and equal partners. We welcome them not out of obligation, but out of gratitude and respect. The treaty was signed by every representative. Humanity was officially part of galactic civilization again, but this time on their terms. Afterward, Trelvik found Kyle alone, looking out at Earth. Can I speak with you? The Zentari asked. Of course. I wanted to apologize. Personally, I was one of the voices calling for your exile. I was afraid of your people. I thought we were doing the right thing. Kyle was quiet for a moment. You were doing what you thought was best. I understand that. But you need to understand something too. You didn't make us dangerous. We were already dangerous. That's what it means to be human. We evolved in danger. We learned to fight because we had to. You can't remove that from us any more than you can remove our need to breathe. I know that now, Trelvik said, and it terrifies me. Your weapons, your tactics, your willingness to do things no civilized species would do. What's to stop you from conquering us all? Kyle smiled. The same thing that brought us back to help you. We fight to protect things. That's also what it means to be human. Yes, we're violent. Yes, we're dangerous. But we channel that violence toward protecting what we care about. And now, like it or not, we care about the Council. We care about the galaxy. That's not going to change. How can you be sure? Because we've had 50 years to think about revenge. 50 years to plan how we could make you all pay for exiling us. And we never did. When you called for help, we came. Not because we had to. Because we wanted to. Because saving people is also what we do. Trelvik nodded slowly. I hope you're right. For all our sakes. So do I. Kyle said quietly. 1 year after the Treaty of Mars, human colonies began spreading to the stars again. This time they were welcomed. Encouraged even. Systems that had been closed to humanity before were now open. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were established. Slowly, carefully, humanity integrated into galactic society. But they did not forget. Every human child still learned to fight. Every colony still maintained defenses. The shipyards still produced warships. The weapons research continued. Because humanity had learned a lesson 50 years ago that they would never forget. The galaxy was not a safe place. Peace was not permanent. And the only way to keep what you valued was to be strong enough to defend it. Admiral Claire Stevens, now Grand Admiral of Human Forces, stood in the command center on Mars, looking at the display showing human territory. Hundreds of worlds growing every year. Millions of ships, both civilian and military. Billions of people living free under alien suns.